Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Timmy Kemza James. For our new and old subscribers, you're all welcome to today's tutorial. So I'm going to be using this really lovely Ankara print to make an A-line dress for an elderly person. So I'm using this beautiful print from my Ankara collection, Timmy Kemza James on Instagram and Somatize on Facebook. So I'm going to be using the length of the client, which is 62, and then I'm adding 3 inches and I'm cutting a total of 65 inches, which I'm going to be using for the hemming and the baseline of this fabric. So guys, after I had cut out the fabric, like the length of the clients by 2, I now shred it again. So what I have here is just one piece of the fabric that I folded in half, which I'm going to be using to cut the front side of the A-line dress. And I've folded it like so you can see it's up to the length of the client plus my hemming allowance. So let's go into the drafting proper. So now on this side, I'm going to be marking a starting point, which will be like half of an inch. So I don't know if it's the blue chalk or the white chalk that would be preferable for you guys, but so this side is just a baseline where I'm going to be starting. So this side is on fold. I'm going to be marking my regular 3 inches, 8 inches, half of my shoulder line. So in case you're beginner and you're just hearing this for the first time, this 3 inches is for the neck width, and the 8 inches is the standard neck shoulder line. This is half of the shoulder line and half of the neck width. So on this shoulder line, I'm going to drop by 1 inch like so. I'm just going to drop 1 inch, then I'll connect the 1 inch to the neckline. Now the person I'm sewing this for, the shoulder is wider than 16 inches that gave me that 8 inches, so I'm going to extend this slant a lot further now. So from this 8-inch point on the shoulder slant, I'm going to continue by an extra 1 inch like so. So here will be my new point. So the person's shoulder is 18 inches, so this extension is going to accommodate the remaining 2 inches. So I'm going to come down from that shoulder by the client's armhole. So her armhole is 9 inches, so I'm going to mark 9 inches here. Then I'll start from this baseline to measure how long I have till the 9 inches. I have 10.5. I'll come back to this point to mark 10.5 as well. Then I'll just square it along with this line here. Just go ahead and mark this line. So that's going to be her chest line. Now I'll mark the 9 inches shoulder line on the chest line as well, so that I can square it to this point. So I'll just go ahead and square like so. Then I'm going to mark from her shoulder to her affluence, because it's not going to be a tight dress or something like that. It's going to be free. So her affluence is actually 20.5. So I'll mark 20.5 here, and I'll mark 20.5 just so I can square it out. So I'll just rule a line across like so. Rule a line across, then I'll bring it further, then I'll measure her hip length, which I'll take from here downwards to the hip point. Then I'm going to go ahead and mark it, which is 28 inches. The client is really tall and she's a plus size. You remember I said that on the intro. So I'm going to connect this like so. That's her hip line. Now I'll come back to the chest line and insert the bust measurement. So her bust is actually 48. So 48 divided by 4, because I'm folding these by 4. This is 2 for the front. I folded this by 2 in the front. I'll be doing the same thing on the back. That's why we have 4. So I'll mark 48 inches. Now you remember I said it's not a tight dress, so I'm going to be adding 1 inch for the ease. This 1 inch totally means that I'm adding 4 inches actually. So I'll add 1 inch again for sewing allowance to join the front and the back. Now on the affluence point, her affluence is 44 inches. So 44 divided by 4, I have 11. Then I'll mark 11, 1 inch for ease, and another 1 inch, for sewing allowance. Then I'm going to be connecting this side, the upper side, to that's the chest line, to the affluence line. Then I'm not going to be connecting on the hip point, because I told you it's going to be, or let me just measure the hip point for you. So the hip of the client is 54 inches. So I'm going to be dividing 54 by 4 as well. Then I'll mark 1 inch for ease and 1 inch sewing allowance. Then from the hip line, I'll measure what I have there. We're going to be making the A line side. Here I have 16.5, so I'll do the same thing on this side. Now on the hem side, I'll just mark 16.5, like so. Now the reason why I'm not opening this so much is there's the way most A-line dresses looks really weird on the hem side, so I really don't want that for her. So that's why I'm not opening it up that much. But if the client wants it like really A-line, you can go ahead and add, like, let's say 3 inches to the hip point, like so. Then you connect the hip to that 3 inches. So you just go ahead and connect like so, like so. So you connect the affluence point to the hip point, like so. So back to our neck, I'm going to be marking my neck measurement. So for the neck depth, I'm going to be marking 7 inches. So on this, my starting point here, I would go ahead and mark 7 inches for my neck depth. Then on these 3 inches here, this 3 inches standard neckline, I want my neckline to be wider than that. So I want 5 inches. So I'll mark extra 2 along the shoulder slant. And then you determine the neckline you want. Is it a V-neck, whatever kind of neck that you want. But for this dress, I'm going to be making a regular round neck. So I'll just go ahead and just span it like a regular wide neck. Then I'll mark my armhole curve. So I'll just use my curve to make my armhole curve. So from the midpoint of this shoulder line, from the shoulder line to the chest line, that's where, somewhere around the midpoint is where I connected to her bust measurements, which is around here, right? So that is it. I'm going to be cutting that out now, starting from the neckline. You can go ahead and add around 1/2 inch on the shoulder for sewing allowance, but I hardly do that because by not doing it, it sort of give me a little bit of fit that I like. So I'm just going to cut along my armhole curve like so. then I'll cut out the entire dress. So for the back, what I did is I just laid the front on the back, which I folded in half. But this time around, the center front is going to be on the open side of the back, so it's not going to be on fold, because I may or may not add a zipper, but that's why we have this here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the back. Now I moved the front side a little bit, like two inches inwards, before I laid it, because this side, in case I decide to add a zipper, that will be the zipper allowance. In case I decide to just close it up with a stitch, I'll use this same allowance to close it up with a stitch. So I'm just going to draw that starting point line that we have here, like so. You remember, every other thing is going to be the same except for the neckline and this zipper allowance. So for the zipper allowance, I'm just going to come down like around 1.5 to 2 inches depth. It's not going to be 7 for the neckline, sorry, it's not going to be 7 inches depth like I have on the front. It's just going to be around 1.5 to 2 inches depth, and is as well a straight neckline. Then I'll just go ahead and cut that out like so. Every other thing is the same. So for the sleeve, I went ahead and folded these in by 4, you can see. So I folded it like so. Then I'm going to mark the length of the sleeve. You make sure everything is sitting nice, and after folding you have enough to accommodate the sleeve round and your sewing allowance. So I'm going to be making a straight sleeve with like an onion, a balloonish look on the lower side. So I'll just mark the length of the sleeve, of the upper sleeve. I'm doing 13 inches because I'll use 1 inch here for hemming, for joining the upper side of the sleeve with the balloon stuff. So I'm marking 13 inches here as well, and I'm going to connect it like so. Now from this point I'm marking 5 inches, which is her arms high, like so, and 5 inches here. Then I'm going to connect like so. These are calves height or arms high measurements, whatever you prefer to call it. So I'll mark her biceps, half of her biceps round measurement. I'll mark that like this. Then I'll connect to this point like so, in a slant. Now I'll find the midpoint of this slant like this. Then I'm going to use my armhole, my French curve, to connect like so, right? Then I'll turn the French curve to this side and connect like so. So I have this like this. Now I want pleats on the shoulder side of the sleeve like so. So I'm going to come up from this sleeve length. I'll come up. If you go up more than 5, the puff is used. So depending on how puffy you want that place is what you do. So I'm going to just mark 4 inches instead. Then I'll just by freehand connect it to the midpoint here like so. You can still use your armhole, your curve to do that. It will still be the same. So I'll mark 1 inch for joining allowance here. Then on this side I'll mark the round of her elbow on this side like so. Then I mark 1 inch for joining as well. Then I connect like so, and I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So here we have our sleeves, like so. So I'm going to cut a long strip that measures like 3 or 4 times this measurement. Then that's what I will use for the bob side. I'll just do that off camera and show you. So guys, for the blouse, I'm going to start from the front. I'll be turning for the dress. Sorry, I said blouse. So I'm going to sew in the facing and turn it over and top stitch. So I'm matching the facing right side, matching right side. Make sure everything is nice and aligned. Now I'm going to make notches so that I can top stitch with ease. Cut out any excess thread to avoid cloaking on the dress. Then you open it and top stitch with your seam allowances facing the facing, or with your seam allowances lying on the facing side. So you can see the seam allowance is facing this way, likewise my facing. So I'm just going to top stitch that. So this is what the neck looks like right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the back. Then I would top stitch as well with the facing. Mind you guys, you can go ahead and add hairstay on your facing, right? So let me go ahead and do that, then I'll come back to show you. So for the back side of our dress, I've gone ahead to do my facing and I added the zipper. Remember I said I wasn't sure if I was going to add a zipper. I just added the zipper to avoid any complaints of whether or not the dress could not enter her body without a zipper. So I just did that to avoid that complaint. So now I'm going to match my shoulder, right side of the back shoulder facing right side of the front shoulder, like so. Then I'll hold all together. Then I flip the facing on the back over. I'll just go ahead and flip the facing, like so, one side of the facing to the other side, just so I can sandwich all the seam allowances inwards. So I'll just go ahead and sew with less than half of an inch, a little bit less than half of an inch sewing allowance. You use the sewing allowance that is more comfortable for you. I explained that when I was cutting, so in case you didn't see that, go back and watch that part of it. I'll do the same thing to the other shoulder. So this is it. Now I'll open up the shoulder part of the dress, like so, and this is what we have. Now let me prep my sleeve, then we'll come back to fix the sleeve and close the body. Now for the sleeve, here is the upper side of the sleeve, so I'll just open it up, and on the right side of the sleeve I would go ahead. You remember that long piece that we cut out to be like 2 or 3 times more than the length of the sleeve opening here? This material, I just cut out a square, a rectangle, sorry, and it's really long, so it depends on how much pleat you want and how big you want that. So that's why I'm not giving you a number to use. So I'm going to match the hem of the sleeve and one end of that side of the rectangle, right side, facing right side. Then as I'm sewing, I'm going to be pleating. So when I sew a little, I'll be pleating the rectangle until it gets to the hem of the sleeve. Like this, and when you flip it, it should look like this, right? Forget about this paper, is from the print. I'm yet to pull that out. So what I'll do is to lie it back down like this. Then I'm just going to fold this sleeve like so. On the right side, I'll just fold it inwards. Then look carefully what I'm doing. Then I'm just going to turn the pleats this way. Then I'm going to be seeing the right side of the rectangle, right? While the main sleeve has been folded inwards. If you don't get this, you rewind the video and watch over again. So you grab this hem and lie on the seam allowance that you have here. So you match that point. What you want to do is to sandwich the edge of the main sleeve in between the same rectangle. So now I'm going to bring it back and continue sewing. Now on that same sewing allowance that I did, that's where I'm going to be sewing, and I'll be making pleats as well. So what I just did is to sandwich the main sleeve in between that same rectangle. So I'm sandwiching it in between the two hems of the rectangle. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue pleating. I'll pleat as well till I get to the end. So by the time you're done, you should have something that looks like this. Now this opening here, you're just going to put your hands inside and pull out the main sleeve. Now this will create the bulb on this side. If you want your bulb standing fuller and stiff, you can go ahead and add
um hard nets inside of it. You can make gathers out of hard nets and also sandwich that in between, but I don't want that. That's why I'm leaving it out like that. So you see I have that sort of onion pulp stuff going on here, like so. So I'm going to mark the midpoint of my arm sky on the sleeve. I'll just create a notch there, then I'll bring back my bodies so I can join the sleeve. So now on this shoulder line of the main dress, I'm going to just go ahead and bring the right side of the sleeve to face the right side of the shoulder. Then I'll match the notched point, which is the midpoint of my arm sky, to the midpoint of the shoulder. I'll bring it to my sewing machine and just hold that down with my needle. Then on this shoulder, the ending of my armhole, I'll just match that point like so. You can go ahead and pin down your armhole. So I'll pin down my sleeve starting from the armhole point on my shoulder. On my main dress, you can add lining to these guys. So this excess that I have here, I'm going to make a pleat on that point. You remember I intentionally added to the sleeve so I can get a curve like that, puff effect, a little bit of it on the shoulder side of the sleeve. So I'm just going to be pleating that excess just around the shoulder. So you have to gently do this and do it wisely, guys. So I was able to get 3 pleats. So that should be fine for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew. So guys, by this time the sleeves are fixed. Here you go. So now I'll turn to the wrong side. Everything will come to the wrong side, including the sleeve. Then I'll start sewing from the sleeve opening like so, from here down to the hem of the dress. So using 1 inch sewing allowance, just like I left when I was cutting, I'll go ahead and sew, ensuring that every seam line aligns with every seam line.
So that was the last part. By the time I was done doing this, I went ahead to hem the dress, and then voila, here is the finished look of the dress. It was so beautiful. I added a pocket off camera, and then I'm going to be beading this dress, so you can just go ahead and do any other thing you want. Look at the sleeve, it looks beautiful, and this is for an elderly person. So I mean, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and see you in my next video.